Here come the sellout chants thanks to the haircut. Has to be done. Some things you just gotta do, especially whenever you get new work that kind of expects it. For a long time, people have wondered why I've never reviewed Parkway Drive, and it's mainly been for a pretty simple reason. I've usually been tied down to my docket pretty, concisely whenever these albums have dropped, but now that has changed with the release of IRE, which is coming out this coming Friday. Parkway Drive is a group where albums such as Deep Blue and Atlas are considered by some to either be much better than their original the first couple that they've released, either that or it's a flip-flop type of effect. It's almost like what you saw with fan bases after, say, Master of Puppets and Injustice for All, then comparing them to the load and reload cycle. It just seems as though the real thought process is always inverted on those one way or the other. With that being said, IRE is certainly an album with a bit of a different ilk to it. This is a disc that the Australian metalcore band has seemed to try to use to sort of break the mold a little bit and kind of showcase a little bit more uniquity within this whole metalcore scene, if you really want to even really call it that. Though it does exhibit the metalcore tendencies, it does also exhibit some deathcore tendencies, but there's a lot more mellow death here that I'm hearing than a lot of other things as well. In fact, the name that comes to mind is once again the always known In Flames. There's definitely a lot of that melodic side that feels very present on this record, and really, whenever you look at the first half of this disc, starting off at Destroyer and maybe going all the way down to Writings on the Wall, in fact, I might even cut it at Fractures, those first 5 songs are probably some of the strongest material that you're going to hear out of the metalcore genre this year, or maybe within the past few. Just some really tight material on here that has excellent rhythm, just fantastic writing, and the lyricism certainly shows itself off very nicely. There is a track in between, or within this whole idea, that's sort of talking about some of the social mores of society, talking about how it seems that people will tell us that we should do one thing and then do another, that basic idea, which is very resemblant to the whole Boots and Blood idea that we heard out of Five Finger Death Punch just about a month and a half ago, or really more like a month ago. The difference is that Parkway Drive uses some great lyricism in order to paint their picture, and it's one that gives it a much more rebellious, not to mention, it's one that hits a little bit harder. It has a lot more poignancy than the Five Finger Death Punch song did, principally because of its ability to really channel that message with a lot of power, with a lot of ilk, and it has that spark of rebellion that's within it. And hey, Aussies, we all know, can be some pretty ridiculous folks. They have a lot of energy, but this is certainly one where that Aussie blood reminds me of bands that I've listened to from the past out of Australia, and the one that I can remember is The Living End, just a fantastic product that has really been way too long since I've even listened to them. I should really revisit that band sometime in the future. Now, the second half of this disc, some would say, really it doesn't compare to the first half very well. And whenever you get to Bottom Feeder and The Sound of Violence, I'm prone to agree a little bit. It just doesn't feel like this material is as strong as a general feel. But Bottom Feeder, I think, is going to really appeal very nicely to a lot of individuals that may be looking for something to really pound their fist to and have a lot of triumph or a lot of anger within themselves while they listen to this. It could be one of those pissed off tracks that you really jam out to whenever you feel like hitting something. For me, for a long time, it was a couple of tracks off of an All Shall Perish album, but that was, God, about 10 years ago. Shows my age. But at the same time, I have to say that Dedicated going into a deathless song is certainly where that whole idea that the second half is weak or not on par with the first kind of diminishes a little bit. Dedicated itself is a bit of an interesting concept that moves into a deathless song, which is definitely a final track that you want to have. This is the style that you want to employ for your final track, considering it has a lot of what this band does well wrapped together into one nearly 6-minute long track. And it's almost a shame I have to say this, it is almost a shame that Parkway Drive does not employ the style that's used on tracks such as Fractures and A Deathless Song just throughout the course of their entire album, as opposed to writing some of the ways in which they do, considering whenever they expand that horizon a little bit, my gosh, it's just really, really tight. Not to mention it opens up their ability to really shred a little bit on the guitars. It lets that rhythm sort of sink in, do a little bit of that repetitive nature that sometimes really just works to a band's benefit, because it creates a very hypnotic style of feeling. And especially if the riff is killer enough, it's one that can just get stuck in your head. It's a hook that just gets really, really stuck, but it's not like those stupid-ass earworms and hip-hop dance tracks like we just talked about. No, it's instead one where you just sort of feel like you're just jamming out with your head, moving in that headbanging motion, and you just hope it never ends. You hope that it doesn't ever subside, either that or that it really leads to something that somehow supersedes it, that it really follows it up nicely. And this is a track that really showcases the tools in the toolkit very well, and at the same time provides a fitting finale for an album that I think is going to surprise a lot of people. I know Parkway Drive has a fair number of fans, I understand that, so maybe it's not going to be a surprise to them, maybe it's more of a surprise to me, since I have not listened to much of their work prior to this. But this is an album that, from a lot of what I've seen people speak about Atlas and Deep Blue, I think they're going to really embrace where this has gone, because it's very solid work. It's very solid material. It's one that I would give an 82 out of 100 with. I think the first half just really gives this something to really speak about. And I think that this is also an album that has really, it gets to choose its own destiny a little bit, considering it's an album where repeated listens are going to not only be warranted, but they're going to want to happen. You're going to want them to happen, because you just leave the album feeling so positive about the band as an overall experience that you're going to want to go back to it. But I want to know what you guys think about IRE by Parkway Drive, what you think about the band in general. Let me know in the comments below. And, oh boy, pretty wide open week we have this week, so we're going to have a little bit of fun on the channel. And by fun, I mean we're going to just do some things that are a little bit different, sort of similar to what we did yesterday. If you guys haven't checked out the track review of Watch Me Whip, Watch Me Nay Nay by Silentio, you should definitely check that out. It's definitely a thing. I'll talk to you guys later. I'm Coverkillernation, and I'm out.